Hello, friends. It's the Matt Murphy Radio Show getting underway for another day on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Pleased you've decided to join us. Let's get the pleasantries out of the way, and we'll get things lumbering under our own weight. It's 12:04. It's afternoon, which is why I say good afternoon. It is Tuesday, March 19. It's the first day of spring 2024. It's our episode 534 on today's proceedings on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm pleased you've decided to join us. Whatever time you're able to give us, we're certainly appreciative. We've got 3 full hours, and we'll hand off to Brian Wilson in the drive right around 3 o'clock this afternoon. There are ways to listen and watch the television show, the radio show. You can watch on Super Talk TV. More on that in just a moment. You can also listen on 99.7 FM. There are a variety of streaming platforms available to you. You probably know some of the names, like iHeartRadio, Spotify, others. If you go to those platforms and type in Super Talk 99.7 WTN, you'll find us. And you can listen to us wherever you go on your smartphone. You can also download our own app. We would encourage you to do that, but I understand that, time's valuable and your space on your phone screen is valuable as well. But if you choose to do so, just go to your app store, type in Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and boom, bango, bimmo, bammo, whatever it is. There we are, ready to go, available at your service. Super Talk TV is available for you masochists in the listening audience. Bell K chooses not to participate on Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. I do, because I love you. Bell does not, and you can extrapolate from that what you will, which is why we call him Headless Bell. He does participate in his own way, however. He offers the title of the television broadcast proceedings, and today's TV broadcast is entitled
Matt Murphy Show. Do not argue with an idiot. Just stop voting for them. Libertarian lunch, noon to 3. Women in the kitchen.
I thought you were coming after me. Oh, there you go. Right at the end there, you come after me. I thought you were coming after me on that. Yeah, I was listening to Hand, and normally I don't start my show by carrying over the subject that he was talking about, but he was discussing this decision on the part of the city of Nashville to loosen, I guess one would say, some of the physical requirements for their police officers. Obviously, they are behind in terms of their numbers. They need more people on the force. And in an effort to, I guess, specifically get more women applying for the role of a Metro Nashville police officer, they are claiming that they are going to, I would describe it as loosening the requirements. I don't know if they would describe it as loosening the requirements. But it's obviously designed to get away from some of the physical requirements like lifting things, pulling things, upper body strength type of things, and getting more to agility requirements. Here's what I would say, and also, I mean, all jokes aside, there should be one standard for the United States military. There should be one standard for police forces around the United States, in my opinion. Unless you're creating two different types of police officers. And I understand that there's a big difference between the guy that's patrolling Lower Broad on a week in and week out basis and someone that's perhaps pushing pencils. I'm not trying to besmirch police officers when I say that, but I think you know what I mean. I also fully understand that at some point in a police officer's career, depending on the officer, maybe they're not spending the time in the gym, or they're simply predisposed to the donut shop to the point that they don't have the physical abilities that they did when they came into the force. So I would not have any trouble with retesting either. All of that to say, we have numbers issues when it comes to our police officers. And I all jokes aside, I think the conversation's good, and I had a good time listening to Hand, and I had a good time having fun with him during the cross. But I don't care what your gender is. We need to, as a society, support our police officers. We need to, as a city and a community, better support our police officers. Can you imagine wanting to be a cop right now after the last 3 or 4 years? Can you imagine in the aftermath of the summer of love of 2020 and the manner in which cities were burned to the ground? Can you imagine? I want good people with the right mindset doing the job. That's it. And I will support them. That's it. Now, when it comes to standards, what I don't want is for us to lower the standards to the point that we get to a tipping point where the individuals asked to do the job don't have the ability to do the job, and they're either going to put themselves in harm's way or they're going to put the citizens in harm's way because they do not have the ability to protect and to serve. Not every officer is going to be built the same, and obviously not every officer is going to be able to automatically encounter and overtake any and every potential perpetrator or suspect that they encounter. Make the standards the same, and let's go. I don't care what you're packing in your pants. I care what you're packing on your hip, and I care what you're packing in your head. Man, that was well said. I wish I'd have thought of it. Oh, I did. That was me. Right, Murphy was right. Same standards. The same goes for the military. And look, if that means relooking at our standards for the United States military or our standards for the police force of the Metro Nashville police officers, that's fine too. If we determine that it's just not a realistic requirement or realistic that we have an expectation that every police officer is going to be able to lug 150 pounds here, there, or everywhere, or I don't know what the standards are now. And I understand that there are some fairly rigorous training points within the academy and some fairly rigorous testing that you have to overcome in order to become a police officer. I'm getting conflicting remarks on the Members Nutrition Super Text line regarding the physical requirements for men and women in the United States military. 6796 says the military has the same physical events for men and women, but the number of sit-ups is more for men than women to max out, for example. Yeah, I understand some of those things as well. Look, I've known plenty of female police. I know one of my good friends that I worked with in Birmingham, Alabama, had a family member who was and is a captain in the Birmingham police force, one of 4 captains, worked her way up through the ranks, walked to the beat, was a sergeant for a long, long time, eventually became a captain and was considered for lieutenant chief. I think that's the way they say it down there. One way or the other, plenty of women make fine police officers in the Metro Nashville Police Department. We should not be lowering standards in order to get more in, except to say that we need to reevaluate standards all the time and make sure that those standards match up with the requirements of the job. And that's what I have to say about that. It's 1212 Super Talk 99.7 WT, and I mentioned it's episode 534. It's going to be a good one. Going to be a good one, as we have the one and only international music superstar John Rich stepping into our studio today to talk about his life in country music, to discuss his life entering the blood sport that is the political arena, how unafraid he is, truly unafraid with regard to his outspoken nature, and why he has decided to step into more local politics. You might hear John Rich's voice on our airwaves on Supertalk 99.7 WTN, supporting a particular candidate by the name of Chris Spencer, a gentleman that we've had on the show on a couple of different occasions, who's running against an incumbent, Farrell Hale, for the Tennessee State Senate. We'll talk to John at about 1:05 this afternoon. We'd love to speak to you, as always, on the telephone line, 615-737-9986. I love turning a monologue into a dialogue, and that's the way you do that. 615-737-9986. You can also join us on the Members Nutrition Super Text line. That is up and running at 615-737-9986. I've known this for a long time, and I think people feel about I've known for a long time that liberals run around proclaiming that they love free speech, freedom of speech, and the ability to freely express oneself. And they talk about their intimate love for the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. And I don't think they understand it. I really don't. When I was in the 10th grade, we were asked to memorize it. And for whatever reason, despite my best efforts to beat it out of my head with the amount of liquor and other shenanigans that I've put into my body, I still remember it. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. You know, right up until the point that idiots broke into the Capitol, it's exactly what we were doing on January 6th. Y'all know that, right? That was not an insurrection. It became a riot, sadly, in parts of the Capitol. In other parts of the Capitol, there were just dunderheads milling about. But up until the point that barriers were crossed and windows were busted, it's exactly what was happening on January 6th. And that is American. As can be.
Don't forget all those cops that were murdered, too.
That's Bell being sarcastic. I've realized, based on emails that I'm getting, that people still don't understand your sarcasm. I got one from yesterday. How can Bell feel? I forget what it was about.
It was about that idiot crow in Colorado saying that there were police officers murdered on January 6th.
That's right.
What a moron.
Right. What a dummy. So, yes, there were. It was a peaceable event until it wasn't, but it was never an insurrection. But if you examine those words, you're dealing with a lot of different things. You're dealing with a lot of different freedoms, and it was all designed for the government not to encroach upon said freedoms. It was a design by which, the Bill of Rights was almost dismissed as unnecessary. Our founding fathers believed that they had said enough in the Constitution of the United States. How much more do you need? We granted the rights and the authorities that the federal government has to govern the states, the various states, and otherwise everything else is going to be left up to the individual states themselves, which are, from a hierarchy standpoint, which stand above the federal government, because the states, after all, created the federal government. It's very similar to the movie Frankenstein, in as much as Dr. Frankenstein creates Frankenstein's monster, and Frankenstein's monster eventually destroys Dr. Frankenstein. Well, the states themselves created the federal government, and they created a federal government that exists, at least its constitution, superior from a rule of law perspective to the very states that created them, but only superior in that what it says about their relationships with the states and what it specifically grants the federal government the authority to do. And so most of the founding fathers, I'm not here to give you a history lesson this afternoon, but most of the founding fathers, or many, not most, many of the founding fathers thought it was entirely redundant that we would overstate the case that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It was almost overkill to some lawmakers that we would even bother to put this in the Constitution of the United States as the first 10, well, this is the first, but obviously there were a series of 10. Because after all, they specifically granted Congress certain abilities. What is it, Article 1, Section 8? Fact check me, Bell. I think it's Section 8 that grants all the powers to Congress, like the power to tax and the power to do all of these other things. One way or the other, they already specifically spelled out what rights the Congress had in the context or in the wording of the Constitution itself. Why would they need to go further? And there were some very brilliant founding fathers. Very brilliant founding fathers. By the way, I could be way off. Bell. That understood that.
You really think you're off?
I could be.
You think you are?
I don't think I'm off. That's
You're
why
not.
I said Article 1, Section 8.
You're correct.
Okay, good. See there? Not enough tequila. That's still in there for some reason. Brilliant founding fathers recognized that that perhaps gentlemen, and there were only gentlemen, perhaps gentlemen, we understand this. Everyone in this room understands this. Perhaps we sitting here today recognize, I mean, what a brilliant group of human beings. What a brilliant group of freedom lovers. That they understood that while everyone in the room was of basic uniformity with regard to matters like freedom of the press or freedom of speech or the freedom to worship one's religion in a manner of one's own choosing, they all understood that. But they had the foresight to recognize that they wanted this country to live long enough that maybe, yes, maybe there would be people in it that didn't. And here we are today. And I don't think political leftists understand free speech at all. I don't think they understand the First Amendment at all. You don't have the right to limit someone else's speech because you determined it to be hateful. You don't have the right to limit someone else's speech because you don't like it. You don't have the right in America to limit someone else's speech because it is off-putting to you. And I don't control in any fashion how you react to my speech. I control what I say. This is a very dangerous, all of this is bathed in the context of what's being debated at the United States Supreme Court. And we have a Supreme Court justice in Ketanji Brown Jackson that doesn't understand the First Amendment. My opinion. Doesn't understand the concepts of the First Amendment, doesn't understand that it was designed to protect the most rancorous speech first. Because after all, if I'm saying something that everyone agrees with, what is the need to protect that speech? Everyone agrees with it. The Georgia Bulldogs are the greatest college football team in America. There's no need to protect that free speech. Everyone agrees with it. Can I get a little... Never mind. We're late. I was going to demand some glory, but you understand what I'm saying? This is just the beginning of a treatment on this during the Libertarian Lunch. It is very important that we go over there because I don't think liberal organizations and liberals broadly understand the First Amendment at all. I don't think they understand free speech at all. I don't think they understand the role of the government when it comes to censorship at all. And I'll give you a couple of examples of it coming up in just a few minutes. It's 12:23, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hello, friends. Matt Murphy here for Tennessee Men's Clinic. The Tennessee Men's Clinic started in 2014. Evan Bass and his team, they put together qualified urologists to meet you at the door to help you out with your issues involving men's health. There are some men's-specific health items that they focus on, they concentrate on. Things like low T levels are a good example of what they do at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. It's all there to identify issues that happen in your body, men, as you age and as you grow, that can prevent you from doing the things that you love. Whether it's working outside in the yard, whether it's working out in the gym, maybe it's bedroom activities. It's a reality that these things are affected as men get older, and you need someone on your side to help you get right as rain and help you back to that activity, whatever it might be. A lot of guys go to Tennessee Men's Clinic because of bedroom issues. There is no doubt, and there's no shame in that. 50% of men listening to my voice will have some sort of an issue before they pass this mortal coil. It's time to get back right. It's time to get with the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Let's give them a call. It doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, and 2 locations to serve you. One's in Midtown Nashville, the other's in Cool Springs. Let's do this, men. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Or give them a call today, 615-208-9090. 208-9090 for our friends at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. It's 1228. Happy to have you with us. Coming up in just over 30 minutes, we are pleased to welcome country music superstar John Rich into studio with us. Obviously, John is well known to all of us. He is very politically active on the national front and now on the local front. He's made his feelings known about a specific race that is happening for state senate. And we'll let him tell you where he is on that and why he is on that. And we'll talk about a number of different things and break it down. If you've got any questions for John, get them in here on the Members Nutrition Super Text line, and I'll field those and get them out to him. And maybe, just maybe, we'll answer one or two live on the radio. It's John Rich coming up at about 1:05 this afternoon on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You know, the New York Times doesn't seem to understand it. Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't seem to understand it. I've got some audio from her in just a moment. And typically, it occurs to me more and more as we move forward as a nation, our friends, quote unquote, on the political left don't seem to understand it. That free speech is here to protect even the most rancorous of speech unless and until it puts one or multiple individuals in direct harm's way. That is the inciting a riot provision. Now, the devil's in the details there, right? And I think there's a lot to be said about how individuals are going to define riots and how they're not going to define riots. How they're going to define incitement is a more important question. Incitement seems to be in the eye of the beholder nowadays, and liberals beholden a lot of animosity toward conservatives and libertarians alike. Hurtful speech, hateful speech, angry speech, mean-spirited speech, incorrect speech, intentionally lying to other people, it's all protected. Every bit of it. And the answer to bad speech in the United States of America is never, ever less speech, it's more. Unless you demonstrate that the words being spoken are putting people in direct harm's way. It is a very limited standard by which the government may step in and preclude you preemptively from speaking your mind in a freedom-loving society. And by the way, if it seems personal to me, it's because it is. I'm in the free speech business. It's what I do. It's the world that I live in. And the free exercise of your right to express your feelings on a matter and to express your opinions on the matter and to express yourself openly is the basic backbone of the United States of America, and more broadly, freedom generally. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to worship a God of your choosing. All of those things are the backbone of a freedom-loving society. And if you diminish those things, you're diminishing that freedom-loving society to the point that eventually it will be eroded away and you won't have it anymore. It's the cycle of democracy as expressed by Alexander Tytler. Most of you have seen it, even if you don't know that you've seen it. I don't have it in front of me now, but it's the basic cycle of how things work, and eventually we become comfortable enough. We become fat and happy off the largesse of freedom that we eventually lose them again, and the cycle begins afresh through bondage. 615-737-9986. I'll tell you what Ketanji Brown Jackson had to say about the First Amendment yesterday and what the New York Times, the paper of record has weighed in, and they don't seem to understand the First Amendment either. It's all coming next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Speaking of freedoms, you ought to have the freedom to choose a health care plan that is right for you. And Pat Davis assists you in that regard. And I am here to talk about it right now. Pat Davis and his team of experts, they are your healthcare concierge. I mean, I say it that way because it's a great way to describe it. They don't work for any particular health company or health insurance company. They have all of the health insurance companies at their fingertips. And when you come to them, they work for you. And they answer or ask a couple of questions. They answer all of your questions, and they go to work, Pat and his team, finding you the right program for you that's going to cost you the least, that doesn't charge you for things that you don't need. And oftentimes, you're going to find yourself 30 to 60% lower in cost than even Obamacare, which is supposedly the lowest around. And the bonus there is that you get to figure out what you need in a health care coverage, not the government. You design your own plan that's managed by you and not the government. No surprise tax bills if you pay for your own health insurance, if you're uninsured, if you're on COBRA, or if you're uncomfortable with your employer insurance. It is time to make the call to Your Health Plan Man. Call Pat Davis and his team today. Go to yourhealthplanman.com. That's yourhealthplanman.com, or give them a call at 855-4-PLAN-MAN. 855-4-PLAN-MAN. One more time numerically, 855-475-2662. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to yourhealthplanman.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy until 3. John Rich coming up just after 1 o'clock. Excited about that. If you have any questions for John, whether it's music related or political related, you're invited to get them in. Members Nutrition Super text line is up and running, 615-737-9986. I just looked down and I realized my my inner sanctum sanctorum has been defiled, Bill.
How?
Well, I had my notepad downstairs this morning. I was doing a little work on my laptop. The neighbors, they're replacing their fence, which we share on one side of our backyard. So
on the left side when you're looking out back?
If you're looking out back, is on the right side. If you're looking toward the backyard.
Got it pictured.
And so we had to get the dogs out early, which he did. And then, so I changed my MO a little bit. So I was working downstairs as opposed to in the office. And my wife got a hold of a pen and wrote a question for John Rich on my notepad, because on my notepad,
that is, you totally,
she's violated my she's violated the inner sanctum
she has
sanctorum.
not.
I disagree.
She is completely within her rights to write on her husband's work notepad, especially when it's a question for a guest that you are soliciting questions for. Erica, you are completely in the right. Ignore this man. He is wrong.
I don't. There are examples that I could use as to what I'm trying to express here, but every one of them will get me into more trouble than it's worth to make the joke. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it makes absolute sense to me.
Like I'd be like, do you see me going into the laundry room and messing with the fabric softener? But I mean, well, she does all the laundry because she says I do it wrong.
You do it wrong, so she won't let you do it.
That is not true. Everything goes into the washing machine and everything gets washed on cold and everybody's fine. Everything's fine. But no, that's not good enough. Anyway, it's a pretty good question, though. When John goes out on tour, what vibe does he get from the people across the United States of America? How does he feel? I would add to that, how does he feel things are trending with regard to politics around the United States of America?
Erica, after this little tirade on his part, just don't help him with his job anymore. Don't give him solid questions to interview a guest with. No, just make him do it on his own.
I actually asked her this morning if she had anything that she would want to ask John, because I knew he was coming in.
Oh, so not only did she answer a question that was
doesn't give her the right to get all in here and
does
mess around with my notepad here, man.
Erica, just take a Sharpie next time and black everything out.
The Bell and Erica show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. That's got a good ring to it. Got a really good ring to it. Anyway, John's coming up in about 25 minutes or so. Ketanji Brown Jackson had a few questions. There's a case before the United States Supreme Court regarding social media and what role they play in limiting the ability of individuals to offer information and even misinformation on their social media platforms. Here's Ketanji Brown Jackson not understanding the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.
Justice Jackson?
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods.
Y'all hear that? It really is, in the first 12 seconds, the most important thing that she says. There's another, 58 seconds of it.
The Bill of Rights was literally written to hamstring the government, you stoop.
It is literally, quite literally, the entire point of the First Amendment of the United States of America to hamstring the federal government, to prevent the federal government from abridging our rights, among those freedom of speech.
Justice Jackson?
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods. What would you have the government do? I've heard you say a couple times that the government can post its own speech, but in my hypothetical, kids, this is not safe, don't do it, is not going to get it done. And so I guess some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country
by limiting speech.
So
what she's talking about there is that the government has a duty to prevent you from speaking openly on either social media platforms or in the public square, for that matter. I mean, we're discussing this with regard to Facebook or X or whatever. X doesn't do this, thank God. Do you know how much we owe Elon Musk that he bought that company? With regard to social media platforming and the ability to speak openly on social media platforms? Enormous amounts. Anyway, she's discussing the government's ability to arbitrarily determine what is right, what is wrong, what is inbounds, what is out of bounds. Specifically, the First Amendment creates a dynamic by which it is not the government's role to do that, except and until you reach a threshold that you are endangering the lives of other people. Either through, Bell and I could sit here from now until the cows come home and come up with examples. Threatening the life of another human being on a platform is not permissible. Threatening the life of another human being in the public square is not permissible. Telling people to pick up their pitchforks and go to Farmer Johnson's house and rough him up, not permissible. The First Amendment is not without certain regulatory control based on the society that we live in. But it should be only if we are specifically endangering the lives of other people or the rights of other people. If I understand that, if a dunderhead on the radio understands that, I don't understand why Ketanji Brown Jackson does.
Some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country.
Oh, by the way, we're a highbrow show. And so I'm not going to point out the fact that she said duty.
So I guess some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country. And you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging.
That was duty. Hold on. Don't make me laugh. Don't make me laugh. Hey, Bell.
Duty.
That was duty number 2. That was duty number 2.
That was the second number 2.
That was duty
to protect the citizens of this country, and you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging or even pressuring platforms to take down harmful information. So can you help me? Because I'm really worried about that.
She seems to be struggling.
You've got the First Amendment operating in an environment of threatening circumstances from the government's perspective, and you're saying that the government can't interact with the source of those problems.
No. And that's not what was being argued in front of Ketanji Brown Jackson. It's not a matter of government interaction. If government wants to add speech, that's one thing. By the way, none of this precludes Facebook and or other privately owned platforms from coming up with their own rules and regulations. It's different. This is a matter of the government intervening on said platforms and demanding of these platforms that they do certain things with regard to COVID-19. There was a prevention of alternative information by the government in 2020, 2021, and beyond on social media platforming. Think about that for a moment. Even if I am wrong, I ought to have the right to say it. Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't seem to understand that. And she is a sitting Supreme Court justice wearing a black robe in good standing with the United States of America. And it's just, hard to comprehend. The New York Times doesn't seem to get it either. The New York Times wrote an op-ed, I suppose it was, and the New York Times believes that free speech is an unsettled question. The New York Times, one would think, considering that their organization is included in the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The New York Times says, the arguments strike at the heart of an unsettled question in modern American political life. In a world of unlimited online communication in which anyone can reach huge numbers of people with unverified and false information, where is the line between protecting democracy and trampling on the right to free speech? Protecting democracy. Whose job is it to protect democracy? And what does that mean to the New York Times? What do you think they mean when they claim they want to, quote, protect democracy? What I would suggest is that they want to select winners and losers. Winners and losers. More coming up on that in just a moment. It's 12:49, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hello, friends. Matt Murphy here. Paul Winkler and Paul Winkler's team of experts are ready, willing, and able to help you in any way possible to make more for your money and to make more with your money. And I'm here to talk about it. It's an election year. And a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen in the stock market. Paul Winkler understands that, and for that reason, Paul Winkler is ready, willing, and able to talk with you about it. Paul Winkler recently had a webinar called Politics and Portfolios, How to Invest During Election Season. It went off like gangbusters. It's still available on his website. Friends, it is an important time this election season. You need to know what's going on in the markets. You need to know whether the markets are going to outperform during an election year, underperform during an election year. Paul's going to break all of that down in an informative and educational way for you. And the bottom line is this. He educates first and foremost so that you understand the investment strategy, his approach, and how it differs from other guys. Now, I'm paid to do this advertisement. I'm paid every time this advertisement airs. But I'm not paid to be a client of Paul Winkler's. I'm a client of Paul Winkler's because I believe in the way he does his business. I want you to go online at paulwinkler.com. That's paulwinkler.com. And find out exactly what Paul can do for you. I promise you, you'll be satisfied. Paul Winkler and his team of fiduciaries are there for you, 10 separate offices to serve. Find out more at paulwinkler.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Sitting here with the man that you're going to be talking with in about 8 minutes or so. His name is John Rich. He's coming up with us to talk about his career, his life, his decision to, I consider it a courageous decision, to open the door into the world of politics and walk right on through it, just bust it wide open. We'll talk with him about that coming up in just a moment. A final thought on this concept of the First Amendment. I truly believe, I don't pretend to be the greatest scholar when it comes to our founding fathers and the manner in which they set things up. Their brilliance was more about what they didn't know than what they did, and how they set a course for the United States of America that would allow us midstream or mid-journey to course correct based on what they wrote over 200 years ago. And it's not ambiguous, the manner in which they set us on this course. It is defaulting toward freedom at every single stage in the formation of this country and since then. Even when it ran against economics, and there were occasions, I mean, obviously we have had a bumpy road in our history, and there have been occasions where political dynamics, social dynamics, economics ran afoul of our basic premise and our basic charter. We fought a war, a big one, over a lot of those different concepts. So today, you know, it does not surprise me necessarily that the new front comes electronically, and liberals are pretending that they don't understand the intent of the Founding Fathers' words when they said that Congress shall make no law. They were very explicit about that. And like I said at the beginning of the conversation, the debate was never about whether or not individuals had freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom to worship a religion of their choosing. The debate was whether we need to mention this at all because it's obvious to everyone around us. But the Founding Fathers understood that unless we write it down, there will be those that will misconstrue our intent or our very words and deviate away from the Charter of the United States of America and manipulate this country toward their own purposes. And that's what's going on. It's going on at the Supreme Court level. It's going on all across the United States of America, and it's going on right here in the state of Tennessee. And those are a few of the things that we're going to talk with John Rich about in just moments. It is 12:59, approaching 1 o'clock. Top of the hour news, and John Rich with us in studio. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and you. Hour number 2 starts right now. We've got 3 full. We'll hand off to Brian Wilson in the drive around 3 o'clock this afternoon. Would love to hear from you as always. 615-737-9986. Particularly this hour, if you have any thoughts or comments about our conversation with our next guest, you're invited to get in here. 615-737-9986. We'll take as many phone calls coming up in about 20 or so minutes as we can. Super text line up and running. Members Nutrition Super text line if you have any thoughts along those lines. Our next guest is obviously internationally known. He is a country music superstar. He is also an individual that is unafraid to speak his mind on matters beyond country, well, about country music and beyond country music. And without further ado, we welcome the great John Rich into our studios for the first time. John, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me in.
Yeah,
buddy.
A little applause
We did
in the
it.
background. It occurs to me, you and I have had a couple of good conversations at your place, which if you've never been to John's place, figure out a way to get there because it's fabulous. But I've gotten a chance to see you interacting with people over the last several years. Before we get into some of the specifics that I want to talk about, I wanted to ask you this because you seem as comfortable on stage as you are walking through a room full of folks. And now I understand that most of the times that I see you, it's more of a conservative crowd. But I get the feeling that that's going to be John Rich, regardless of the people around him. You seem to be a man completely comfortable in your own skin.
Well, I know where I come from. I know what I believe. I know whose shoulders I stand upon. And so when you know all those things, some people don't. Some people don't have confidence in who they are or where they come from or what they're supposed to be doing. But I do know those things. And so it doesn't really matter the room or who's in it. I always kind of look people right in the eye and shake their hand and go, how you doing? And a lot of them I disagree with, but shake their hand anyway and move on down the road. Last time I checked, that's what it means to be an American.
Well, and with that in mind, I mean, exactly right. And with that in mind, I get the feeling, and one of the reasons that I appreciated you from the jump, it was not, I mean, the country music, I mean, all of that. I mean, obviously, you've got that going
Obviously,
on.
Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy is your favorite song.
That's
what you're trying to say.
That's what I'm trying to say. And Redneck Riviera is my favorite bar in Lower Broad and my favorite whiskey. But beyond that, did
he bring whiskey?
He did not. He did not.
Throw him out.
Bell says you got to get kicked out because you didn't bring whiskey. Oh, he tell him the story about the last time you were in this studio.
The last time I sat at this mic in this room was with Phil Valentine, and they were impeaching Donald Trump. And I called up Phil and I said, I've got a hilarious idea for a cocktail with Redneck Riviera whiskey called the Impeachment Julep. And Phil busted out laughing. He goes, "Oh my, can you come in the studio and make that?" I said, "I sure can." So I brought a bartender in here and we set up a little mini bar and made impeachment juleps with Phil Valentine, and that was the last time. I see no
bartender. I see no bartender.
Well,
now I know where we rate.
Well, once Trump gets reelected, and the Democrats immediately try to impeach him, we'll bring some more impeachment juleps on the.
Yeah, we'll do another one.
Yeah, but it feels like that you're good as wrong as people want to be if they're on the political left. You're good with that. You're just not going to shy away from who you are and what your values are. It feels like in your world, in the entertainment industry, you're a unicorn, man. That there are a lot of entertainers that run away from their thoughts, their feelings about what we do on a regular basis for fear that they'll get destroyed. And you sit here, you're undestroyable.
Well, I'm no longer owned by anyone. And so by that, I mean, I don't work for a record company, publishing company. I don't have anybody that can tell me what to do. And it's honestly the most creative freedom I've ever had in my life. So I can sing and say and do an interview with whoever I want to, anytime I want. And a lot of the artists out there, especially the ones that are on the radio right now, they do have record deals. That's their American dream. Right. And they spent their whole life getting to the point where they were good enough to land a big record deal. And then they get in the middle of it and realize, holy cow, this is Sony, Warner Brothers, Universal, same companies that make all of our movies and everything else, and they've got the way that they do things. And if you perk up too loud, yeah, you will get hurt, and that's why you don't hear many of them talking. But I kind of subscribe to the old Charlie Daniels theory, that Charlie Daniels. I wish we had him around right now, and I bet everybody listening goes amen to that. But, Charlie Daniels would come out, and if he felt strongly about something concerning the country, he'd just come out and say it. Well, it doesn't mean you don't like Devil Went Down to Georgia anymore. It just means, okay, that's what Charlie said. But he had a way of making you think about things and maybe even shine a spotlight on certain subjects you hadn't even considered yet. I always admired him a great deal for that.
And at what point did you, was it always this way? Were you always kind of the type of guy that you said, I'm going to say what I believe. If I'm asked about any of these things, I'm going to say it? Or has it been the last 5, 6, 8, 10 years?
Yeah. No, I was not always like that because I was also in the machine. I was owned. And so it was my American dream to do that. I grew up in a double-wide trailer in Amarillo, Texas. I have a high school diploma. That's the extent of my pedigree. And I had landed a big record deal. I was writing hit songs, and I wanted to continue doing that. So with that comes some gamesmanship where I would like to do that interview. I would like to make that post. I would like to make this comment. But if I do, I may lose a radio station playing my song, or the A&R guy at the record label may decide to hold our record for 6 months, or something like that could happen. So I didn't. But when my 2 sons were born and started to get old enough where they could understand a little bit what was going on, I watched them watching me one time yelling at the TV like we always do with all this nonsense going on. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, look at these people, what they're doing on TV. I can't believe they voted this way or they're trying to do this. And then I'd put on my gear and walk out the door and walk on the red carpet and play patty cake with the same people I was just yelling at. And it struck me as so hypocritical to be like that, that if I'm dealing with this right now in this modern age, what in the world are my kids going to be looking at when they grow up and move out of the house? And the only blueprint they have is, how did Dad do it? Was Dad's integrity for sale? Was Dad a hypocrite? How did Dad roll with this? Well, if they see that Dad didn't, and Dad took a lot of hits and got knocked down a bunch of times and held his ground, that's what I hope they do too.
Were there any points along, and I want to get to the specifics of why you're here, and we hear your voice on the radio station quite a bit nowadays talking about a particular candidate. We'll get into that, but I'm compelled. Was there a point where you were worried that they would get the best of you when you started speaking out? Or did you kind of protect yourself on the front end to make sure that speaking out, because I wish that there were more of you, but I understand that I don't understand like you do.
They're in a tough spot.
They are in a bad place. Was there any point along the line where you thought, man, this might wreck me?
Yeah, there was, and that started to wreck me, and by proxy, Big and Rich and everything else we were doing. Radio stations wouldn't add a record because they didn't like something I said in an interview, or things like that started to happen. But I decided, well, what's more important to me, my freedom of speech or the approval of the music industry? Because you can't have both. And so I thought, you know what, freedom of speech. This is going to get expensive. And sure enough, it did. And you will not hear any of my new music ever played on a country radio station, save maybe 1 or 2 that are just good friends, ever again. It will not happen. But that's okay, because the trade was worth it. Being able to be an American and not sacrifice your integrity. You're not for sale. Set a good example for your kids, your neighbors, your friends, people that are listening right now, even going, hey, they will give you a black eye and they will give you a bloody nose. Might even break your leg. They'll hurt you. But at the end of the day, if you can survive that and keep coming, you're a different animal at that point. And I've, like I said earlier, I feel more free now than I ever did when I was at the top of my game in the music industry.
It feels like the entertainment industry operates in a similar fashion to what we see on mainstream media, in as much as if they were even keeled on it, that would be one thing. Mainstream media is the entertainment industry. Well, they're one and the same, right?
That's the way I look at news like they program it like entertainment.
Yes, Bell.
Did things ever get tense with Kenny because of your positions and the way you became outspoken, or did it not matter to him?
No, it never got tense with Kenny, to his credit. And, Kenny and I don't agree on a lot of things, but we're a good example of how Americans can disagree on big subjects and we still walk out on stage and harmonize together, and sing to people. And our kids are friends, and family friends back and forth. So, no, he never did. If you asked him directly, he would have to answer. I bet he probably bit his lip a couple of times like, dude, this is going to hurt,
I say it this way, and everything changed in 2015, 2016, but I've always said in the 20-whatever years that I've done this, I've never dropped a liberal friend because of politics. but I've had a hell of a lot of them drop me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of liberal, well, not a lot, but I had liberal friends, particularly up until Trump. And most of them dropped me after Trump. And it bothered me for a minute until I realized I didn't change. They changed. I believe that people have every right in the world to see the world the manner in their choosing and all of those things, and we have the right to freely express ourselves. You're doing it the right. When you talk about your relationship with Kenny, I mean, that's the right way to do it. You can disagree. You can still be brothers. You can agree to disagree, and you can move on with things. And like you say, harmonize. What's frustrating to me is the number of liberals that have decided they don't want to harmonize anymore. They don't want to accept that we're going to be different. We're going to protect rights, the rights of children, the rights of people who can't protect themselves, and we'll live freely and believe what we believe. I truly believe that a lot of people on the political left want to break you down and break Matt Murphy down.
Well, I will say that I think the harmony note from the left is getting louder by the day, because the more pain that is inflicted upon this country and upon them individually in their own zip codes, the more they are waking up to the fact that this is not going well for any of us. And I've said this before, that unity will happen in America when our shared pain becomes intolerable. You know, there are things in this country right now happening and that are going to be happening over the next several months, I believe, where you're not going to care if your neighbor's a Democrat or Republican. You're going to have the same exact problem as your neighbor does.
Is it important for us to be kind of joyful warriors? I mean, it occurs to me, you say that, and I recognize we need to be welcoming warriors, as opposed to, well, you were wrong. You were on the wrong side of history. You need to sit over there and take it. We need to welcome those people into the fold and say, look, there's a better way to do this.
Yeah, I absolutely think that. And you'll still disagree with them at the end of the day, and you don't have to vote for them. You don't have to raise money for them or whatever. But I'm serious. I think when you listen, everybody's zip code has fentanyl in it. Everybody's zip code has all kinds of problems going on in it. It does not discriminate on how you vote. It is just here, and we're all living in the middle of this soup right now in this country. And as it gets more intense and more painful, I believe unity will begin to happen more and more. You can already hear, as I said, that note of harmonizing unity coming. Some of my friends that used to talk to me like your friends dropped you are now calling me and going, hey, what's going on, man? I ain't heard from you in a while. Man, what do you know about this situation or that situation? And then you'll have a 2-hour conversation. You realize they're starting to think because the pain has now encroached on their doorstep.
From a political perspective, I always say the best thing that we have going for us is that liberals think we're dumb and they always overplay their hand. And I see that happening in the White House, where they have enough control and power of Washington, D.C., they've decided to play these notes across the country, and they include a border that doesn't have any security whatsoever. Right. And when the American people that don't really pay that much attention, they're just out and about, they're listening to country music, listening to John Rich, whatever, they're working on the farm. There are hardworking Americans that don't pay that much attention to what we do on a day-to-day basis. When they start getting affected by it, when they start seeing it at their back door, they kind of wake up to it. And when you wake up the country that exists between L.A. and New York City, let me tell you something, it's a powerful beast. You see it every day.
Yeah. I mean, we see it in our concerts.
That's right.
We get up and there's 10 or 12,000 people out there, and I'll ask the question. Let me ask you a question, everybody. Do you still love America? And wow, they screaming at the top of their lungs. And I said, I don't care if she's upside down and inside out. I wouldn't trade our country for any other country.
That's right.
In the face of God's green earth. How about you? And they all scream again. And there's a spirit out there across the country that is on fire right now for the country and for the future, and they're concerned and they want to see it fixed. I
want politicians, and I want to pivot to this local race that you've involved yourself in, because I just want politicians to be honest with me, tell me where they are on issues, tell me where they've been on issues, and let the voters decide for themselves where they go from there. And what
else do you want? Do you want to win the lottery? That'd be another thing. You want a golden egg to hit you in the head?
Is that too much to ask?
It's a lot.
I frankly, and I know we got to take a break, so I don't want to get into this Chris Spencer race here in just a moment. But I think that's ultimately what Donald Trump represents. I think people forgive Donald Trump those personal failures that we've all had in our lives, because he represents a pure honesty with regard to what he sees as the problems that exist in this country. We can agree or disagree, but there's no question that when he tells you what he tells you, it's what he believes, and he's not controlled by anyone else. And I think that is, more than anything, the driving force behind his popularity.
Yeah, I think an honest argument is something we can respect, and a dishonest argument is something you can't trust it. At least you know whatever that person is saying, they really believe it. And I do know people on the left that they wholeheartedly believe everything that they stand for, and they've got a reason why they believe it. It's how they were raised, where they come from, however that was around them. And then you got to sit down and have a conversation with them and talk about, yeah, but what about what's going on right now? That's when the conversation begins to turn.
We'll turn the conversation to local politics, because you've heard John on our station talking about Chris Spencer as a candidate for state senate. We're going to find out why he supports Chris, what it is about that race that got him interested, and we'll do that next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's 1:20 on Super Talk. You know, it's that time of year where this morning you turn on the heat, you let the heat pop on for just a couple of minutes, or maybe 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, and then by afternoon you're turning on the AC because it's hot outside. I mean, that's life in the Southeast. It's life in the state of Tennessee. And if your unit is running not so good, if you have noticed a strain, whether it's the heater or the AC, it's time to call Efficient Heating and Cooling with Jeff Eddy. I believe in Jeff Eddy. I sat down and broke bread with him when I first got to Nashville, and one of the first stories he told me was about a different company, we're not going to name them, who they sold an 85-year-old man a 30-year heating and air conditioning unit. And he was like, you know what? It cost him an extra $10,000, but what do they care? They got him to sign on the bottom line, and they knew that he would be gone long, long before he took advantage of that money. That's wrong. He didn't like it. And Jeff said, I never want to be that guy. I want you to come back to me again and again and again because you believe in the way that I do business. I don't have to have the most trucks on the road. I don't have to have the most service techs. I just want to be able to sleep at night knowing that I did the right thing for the people that I serve. And he does it every single day. It's why I believe in him so much, and why I encourage you to call Jeff Eddy. He never charges you overtime. So if it's at 7 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock in the morning, whenever you call, when he answers, he's not charging you overtime rates because he knows your unit doesn't know what time it is when it breaks down. Secondarily, maintenance calls will never go above $125. That is his commitment to you. Residential maintenance, no matter how many units you have, if he comes to your house, you're not going to get charged over $125. And oftentimes it's a lot less than that. So give him a call, 615-784-4424. They are a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric and an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. It is Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy, joined by John Rich. Such a pleasure to have him in studio. Of course, John is obviously known. I don't need to introduce John from a country music perspective. I don't need to introduce John from a political perspective. He doesn't shy away from his political position on matters. He tells the truth as he sees it, speaks his mind as he sees it, and we need more Americans like him, and I appreciate him being in. And now he has lent that voice to more local races here in the state of Tennessee. Tell me how this kind of happened for you. That have you been looking at Tennessee politics for some time? I mean, obviously you live here, so I imagine you've been paying attention to what's going on, especially since COVID-19. Hold on. Thank you there, Bell. Thank you.
I think, since 2020, when everything hit us all at once, you start paying attention more to what's going on locally, because you could look around the country and depending on where you live, they got different sets of rules for everything with COVID and schools and masks and vaccines and on and on and on. So I was really curious how our state politicians were dealing with this. It was affecting us directly in our own homes at that point. So I started digging down into people's voting records and trying to understand who was who. I didn't know much about it. And then you get down in there and you start running across some voting records that are astonishing, especially when they're professed Republicans, conservatives, and been in office for a long time. And you start to read how they've been voting, and you go, hang on a minute, that cannot be right. And sure enough, it is. And so as I was looking in to District 18 for the Senate, which is Gallatin and out in that area, there's a guy been there since 2013, Senator Farrell Hale. And I don't know him personally, and I didn't come here to give my opinions of him. Everything I wanted to discuss with you today was basically his voting record, because his vote's coming up. And it would normally be none of my business what somebody was doing in a district I don't live in, but the bills he's authored, the bills he has supported, and the bills he's voted against do directly affect my family and your family. So as I got into that, I thought this cannot stand. And a new guy who's never been in politics, Chris Spencer, stepped forward. He said, listen, I'm a dad, I'm a business guy, and this is ridiculous how this voting record is gone. I want to take a shot at this and try to run, and I really don't have any name recognition or anything. So I invited him over to the house. I spent a bunch of time with him, asked him a lot of questions, just feeling this guy out. One of the most sincere people I've ever sat with. And you could tell he hates politics. I mean, it turns his stomach to think about what he's trying to do right now, which to me is the best qualification for someone to run in politics. Exactly the type of politician we need. I mean, right? John Adams said only people that detest politics should run for office. You know, George Washington did not want to be the president. He's begging him, please find somebody else. So I had a lot of respect for this guy that was willing to step in there and do this. And so I got behind him, and people have started talking about Chris Spencer like, yeah, I'm digging more into his positions, and even more so the positions of the guy he's trying to knock out, Farrell Hale. Can you believe some of the bills that Farrell Hale has authored and voted for? So I appreciate you asking me to come in today. I think a lot of people just aren't aware. They're too busy. Frankly, I'm too busy. I've been in 5 cities in the last 9 days. I got 2 teenage boys. I got a lot going on too. But this is important, and 2024 is important. It's important that you pay attention to what is going on and take a few minutes to understand who exactly it is you're voting for.
I've often said that I think we do it backwards. I don't know how to fix it, but I think we need to pay attention more to our local school board than necessarily we do to Washington, D.C. We're probably a part of that on talk radio that leads us to D.C. as opposed to the local school board or the local city council races or your local state Senate race and House of Representative, because that oftentimes matters more at your front door than do some of these issues that happen in D.C. Now, nowadays it's a little bit different because some of those issues are kitchen table issues too, like the fentanyl you mentioned. But toward that end, you know, when I first started delving into Spencer's desire to serve, I looked into Farrell Hale's record, and I did what you did. And I was, surprised that he supported a piece of legislation, and I think it's become a central piece in this campaign that there's a lot of different ways to look at it. They say, well, he gave us the first step toward banning prepubescent surgeries, mutilation surgeries is what I would refer to them as, hormone or puberty blockers, talking about these transgender type surgeries that went on at Vanderbilt. He passed a piece of legislation some years ago. Governor Lee signed it, And on its surface, it looks good because they're doing something about stopping some of this. But you delve a little bit deeper, and that's where it starts to get odd, John.
Yeah, so Senator Hale authored this bill. It's Bill 126, if you want to go look it up, SB 126. And he used a very specific phrase in this bill. And the phrase was Tanner Stage 1. Ever heard of it? I'd never heard of Tanner Stage 1. I have no idea what that is. So I went and looked up in about 5 seconds, what is Tanner Stage 1? Tanner Stage 1 means a prepubescent child, so a child under the age of 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. And the bill protected those kids from all the things you just listed. So 8 or 9 years old. There's a Tanner Stage 2, 3, 4, and 5, all the way up to age 18. The door was left standing wide open for stages 2, 3, 4, and 5. By de facto, when you say we're going to protect Tanner Stage 1 and not 2, 3, 4, 5, that means, okay, so 2, 3, 4, 5 is still wide open. So that's anybody 9 years old or older in the state of Tennessee is still in harm's way.
And that's what Vanderbilt, the medical center over there, that's what they were taking advantage of over the last couple of years, that they had to slam the door on last session once the curtain was drawn back and everybody became aware of it. And Matt Walsh was intimately involved in that. And I know, I mean, a lot of us spoke on it after it was exposed that they were committing to these types of surgery. That's the door that was left open that you're talking about.
That's correct. And so there's a couple of things going on here. Number one, Senator Hale needs to answer the question, why did you put the phrase Tanner Stage 1 in the bill that you authored? Now, his background is he's a pharmacist. So he's a medical guy. He understands medicine. His big donors are Eli Lilly and Pfizer and HCA and all the big medical companies and groups. That's who gives money to Farrell Hale. And so, number one, Senator Hale, why did you put that phrase in the bill? Number two, why did all of our legislators not get on their computers on Google and go, what is Tanner Stage 1, and read it for themselves before they signed it? Mm-hmm. So the admission to the fact that they were duped into doing that is substantiated by the fact that they had to pass another bill 2 years later. 2 years later, that door stood wide open. Pass another bill that now doesn't say Tanner Stage 1. It says anybody under the age of 18, which is what it should have said in the beginning. So 2 years, the door was left standing wide open by a politician who was funded by Big Pharma and all the big medical companies out there. And the question is, why did you do that? I mean, listen, he's not a dumb man. He's a very smart man. Matter of fact, I'd say very smart, because he was able to put something into a bill that everybody went along with, trusting that he knew what he was talking about because he comes from that world, and got him to sign it into law.
Well, it leaves him in a very precarious place. And, I mean, clearly he hears you asking the question. He'll hear Matt Murphy asking the question. I don't know. To my knowledge, he's not answered this question, why it was important to put that into the bill. It had to be repaired 2 years later, so it was obviously a mistake in the bill to put it in there. So it puts him in the position of either you were duped or you didn't know what you were doing at the time that you wrote the legislation, or you did it intentionally.
Well, that's quite a phrase. I mean, Tanner Stage 1, I mean, that's a pretty specific thing.
So you were either confused and did it wrong, or you did it right. Either way,
in either case, the results were the same.
Right.
And so that's just one thing, okay? That's one thing. Remember the red flag law we all had to fight against last fall with tooth and nail, and were able to put that down? Well, he co-sponsored that bill too. There was another bill that came through during COVID when people were trying to get their hands on ivermectin and other medications to, try to treat their symptoms, and the pharmacies wouldn't let anybody have it. Remember that? You couldn't get it. They just wouldn't get it. So the legislature drew up a bill that says pharmacies in the state of Tennessee have to give their patients, their consumers, these particular drugs. It was ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine was on there, and others. And Farrell Hale voted against that, voted against it. And so why is that? Well, look at his donor list. Again, these are not my opinions. These are his votes, his voting record, and these are the companies that give him money to vote this way. So it's a big deal. It's not just District 18. District 18 needs to wake up and pay attention right now. I agree with you that he seems like a really nice guy, and I'm sure he is a really nice guy. I'm sure I'd like him personally. But that's not what we're talking about. The stakes are so high right now. A bill that he authored left the door standing wide open to Tennessee kids from ages 9 all the way to 18. One last thing, if I can.
No, please.
There was a bill called 1944, and I gave a speech in front of the Tennessee House Legislature committees when we discovered all the pornography in the schools throughout Tennessee. And we found all that. I gave a 5-minute speech. That speech led to a lot of our legislators drawing up a bill, Bill 1944. It was moving through. It was going to get passed, and all of a sudden it hit resistance from who? Republicans. A lot of Republicans started pushing back against this bill that would have made it really bad if you got caught with pornography in front of little kids in Tennessee. Guess who didn't support that bill? Farrell Hale. So Senator Hale has a lot to answer for. These are not opinions. This is his voting record.
Well, look, and the door, I would say the door is open. I welcome Farrell Hale to come in and answer some of these questions, but it does merit it merits additional scrutiny why you would pass something like this and use the specific language, particularly on the Tanner bill, the 126. Why would you use this specific language, knowing what that language is? If the goal was to stop any and all of these surgeries for minors in the state of Tennessee, why did you specifically author a bill that would leave the door open for most of the minors in the state of Tennessee?
Good question.
To have these types of surgeries. Real quick timeout. Questions for John, comments for John. He's open to that. I'm open to that. We've got one more segment with the great John Rich in studio on Super Talk 99.7 WTN and the Matt Murphy Show. You know, John and I were just talking about pharmaceutical companies and everything that they do in our lives. And there's a lot of good that goes out of the pharmaceutical industry. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of bad, too. Well, I'm all about preventative. And one of the reasons that I love talking to you about Kraft Body Scan is because that's what they do. When they first came to Nashville, they've been around since 2017. When they first came to Nashville about a year ago, I went in and I sat down with the team at Kraft Body Scan. They're right downtown in the Med Center Plaza there. And I talked with them, and I went through a body scan. I took a full body scan because I wanted to know what was going on inside of my body. Here's the deal. Right now, you can get a heart and lung scan for you and your spouse, you and your wife or husband, for $149. Really, any significant other. If you've got a brother or a sister that you want to get checked out, you can do that as well. $149. Now, normally it's a value of about $1,300 per scan. They're doing it for $149 to introduce themselves to the community. What do? They look inside of your body through a CT scan. It takes about 8 minutes. You leave your clothes on. And they look and they find anything and everything that might be an abnormality long before you would experience it. And that's what it's all about. Getting to this stuff in a preventative way before you start getting the symptoms and before you start having to take the pills and do all of the other stuff. So go to craftbodyscan.com, spell it with a C, craftbodyscan.com, or call them at 615-436-1000. 615-436-1000, Kraft Body Scan. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. United Structural Systems is the one and only company that I would recommend for any concrete leveling at your home, any waterproofing, or any foundation repair. Let's discuss USS. They are the best and have been since 1994 when they opened their doors. 30 years they've been doing this. And for 30 years, over 25,000 people have been satisfied with their work at USS, United Structural Systems. They talk about guaranteeing their best, and they most certainly do. Now, if you want warning signs, if you want to know what it means that your foundation might have issues, have you looked around? Have you noticed doors sticking? That's one example of a warning sign. Doors sticking in doorways, or perhaps a stair step cracking in the concrete of your home. Maybe you've gone downstairs and you've smelled a musty smell, or you've seen water. All of these are signs that you need to contact USS. 615-488-7855, 488-7855, or go to USSTN.com. That's USSTN.com. They guarantee their best. USS. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy. John Rich in studio with us this hour. Rebecca and Matt have questions for John. We will get to you, I promise, in just a moment. Rebecca and Matt, if you have a question or a comment, best way to get through is on the Members Nutrition Super Text line, and it is absolutely blowing up. Hearing all, I'll just give you an example. John Rich sitting in with us, 1063 says, hearing all of this makes me sick. Hails exactly what's wrong with our General Assembly, and most of our Republicans in our General Assembly know it, including our governor, all for Republicans working against us. Look, I would suggest that, for me, it's not personal, and you've made that clear too. I don't know the guy. I just want the best government to represent the people possible, and I don't think that this bill, this 126 particularly, and some of the others that you mentioned, I don't believe that the people of Senate District 18 feel well represented by this type of legislation.
And they probably didn't know about it. That's the honest truth. You can't keep up with this stuff, man. People are working and raising their families and doing all they can to get by right now, and they're not paying attention to that. And I paid attention to it. I took a long time learning it, making sure I really understood what went on here. And once I was sure this is what had happened and that's his voting record, somebody has to talk about it, because he's not the only one. Other people need to look at their representatives too. I will tell the folks in District 18, you are not stuck, okay? I know that makes you furious hearing how he's voted and the bills that he has authored, but you're not stuck. Chris Spencer stepping up, not wanting to run, but knowing something has to be done because he knew about this voting record. I got a lot of respect for a guy like that. And I would urge the folks in District 18 to take a really hard look at Chris Spencer and go, you know what? Let's give this guy a shot and see how he votes. I can promise you he won't be voting and writing bills like Farrell Hale has done. You are not stuck. There's one other thing going on in Sumner County. The election commissions has been allowing Democrats to vote in Republican primaries, which is not supposed to happen, been happening in that county, and swinging and swaying elections back and forth.
So the Democrats are crossing over, doing a little cheating.
Yeah, but that's not allowed in the state, but they're doing it anyway.
Right.
And so the eyes in Sumner County, folks, you need to call those people and say, hey, I don't think so. Because listen, Democrats probably love Farrell Hale. They probably love him. They would much rather have him in there representing them than Chris Spencer. A constitutional conservative, Chris Spencer, they don't want that guy. They want the guy that'll say Tanner Stage 1, and they want the guy that'll work with Big Pharma and do all those things. So you guys have a real situation on your hand in District 18. The primary vote is on August the 1st. You've got time to read about this and learn about it. And March 28th, I will be with Chris Spencer in Gallatin, 6 o'clock, doing a campaign kickoff event, shaking hands. We're going to be speaking and hanging out with everybody. Everybody can come. You go to chrisspencerforsenate.com, grab a ticket. That ticket goes to support his campaign. And I hope I see you out there. It's at the Epic Event Center in Gallatin.
March 28th.
March 28th.
If it helps the effort, I'll tell everybody that I'll be there. If it hurts the effort, then we'd be way in the back, and you will never see me. But if it helps the effort, I'll be there.
What if we got your wife up to sing Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy instead of you? Instead of you being that's your favorite song.
It would be.
See, that's worth the price right there.
It would be the moment of my life if you managed to get my wife up. My wife had a question.
Okay.
It's more broad with regard to politics, and I want to ask it. She wrote it on my notepad. What?
How dare she?
I know. I can't believe it.
His inner sanctum.
She violated the inner sanctum. What vibe is John getting from the people when he goes out on tour across the United States of America? What is he feeling? She, obviously, she wants our next president to be Donald J. Trump. She is also conditioned to be a little bit of a pessimist, and so she's worried. And I think I can read into the nature of that question. What can you say to my wife right now, John, that'll give her a little hope that things are moving in the right direction in terms of the vote this November?
So the way I gauge an audience is how much energy comes back at me from the audience when I say something to them. And I can tell you that it is so intense. When I ask them a question about America, or I bring a veteran up on stage or something like that, it is deafening. And I think every country artist that says things like that on their stage will tell you exactly the same thing. And this is everywhere. This is from Oregon to Florida to Maine. It doesn't matter where I go. When you walk out and say, "Do you still love America?" it is so loud. I mean, it about blow the microphones up. So I would say the spirit of America is alive and well. I think it's hotter than it's ever been. I think people are fired up. They understand that we're on the precipice of losing a lot of what we love about our country. They're watching it dissolve right in front of their eyes, and they do not want to see that happen.
Let's take a couple of questions. Rebecca has been holding out a Hendersonville question for John Rich. Rebecca, you're on the radio.
Hi, John. The first time I met you was the day you gave that speech in Nashville. It was my very first political involvement after moving from California. But I just want to know what we can do to support Chris, because as a former Californian moving to Tennessee, Farrell Hale terrifies me like Scott Wiener terrified me in California. Is there anything more than going to his event on the 28th?
Yeah, you can.
Thanks, Rebecca.
First of all, you're the kind of Californians we want in Tennessee, so we're glad you moved here and hope you love Tennessee. Yeah, you can go to that event on the 28th and show up and support there, but I would start when you're on Facebook, when you're with your groups of friends, and start talking about Chris. Go to his website, chrisspencerforsenate.com. Learn about this guy. See where he came from. See what his platform is. Learn about his family, his businesses that he's run over the years. Get to understand this guy. And I would just say, can you do any worse than Farrell Hale? Can you do any worse for the people in District 18 than his voting record over the past 3 or 4 years? I would say no. So I would just spread the word. There's a lot of power in local conversation. And I think that is one thing I hope everybody starts to focus on. Let D.C. be D.C. We'll handle that as best as we can. But on the local level in your own backyard, look into a Chris Spencer, compare him to a Farrell Hale, and vote your conscience.
I've gotten enough of these. I think it merits me to kind of encapsulate all of your questions along these lines. I'm just reading from them, John. I'm not here to embarrass you. John Rich for governor. John Rich for U.S. House of Representatives or U.S. Senate. John needs to run for something. Why doesn't John run as a candidate? Have you ever thought about it?
Yeah, I get asked a lot about that. And I tell you, my main job right now is raising my 2 boys, Cash and Colt. And, one of them's 14, heading to 15, so they're not going to be around a lot longer. So I don't know what I'll do down the road. That's such a big thing. The boss, meaning the Lord himself, would have to tap me real hard to make me do that, because I absolutely detest politics. I hate everything about it. I don't trust them. I don't like the rooms when I'm in with those people.
Hey, wait a minute. A smart man about 15 minutes ago said that you want the politicians that detest politics.
Do. Well, okay. So if I'm at a point in my life where I feel like the job at hand is to do something like that, I wouldn't rule that out. But right now, that's not anything I'm considering doing. What I do like to do, though, is the interview I'm doing right now, which is to talk about things that I run across and put a spotlight on it that other people may have missed, and make them aware of what their surroundings really are.
Well, and there's no question that you have that ability. And I want to make clear, because I've got a guy saying, are you going to kiss his feet when he walks out, Matt? Just no, I'm going to hug his neck, though, and here's the reason. Because you, through God's gift that he gave to you, you have a tremendous platform, and you could just be doing concerts and making money. You don't have to do any of this. But you are, because you love our country, and you are because you love our state. And that's what I appreciate about you, is that you're bringing it, you're doing your research, you're doing your homework, and you're speaking your mind, and you're doing so in a way that people, obviously you have a platform that people want to listen to, and you respect that platform, and you use it for the better good. And I appreciate that.
Well, it's somewhat of a responsibility because there's a lot of people out there that know the same things that I know, but they can't get on a radio station.
Right.
You know, they can't get on TV. They don't have a big social media account. But they know exactly what I know. They love their kids, too. They love their state, too. They're worried about the future, too, just like I am. And because I'm able to get on a radio station with somebody like you, then you got to go do that, man. I mean, you can't, you know, when the enemy calls me bad names, I get really happy about that. That makes me feel great. There's a verse in the Bible where Jesus said, "Rejoice when you're persecuted for bearing my name." Rejoice, like be overly happy about it. And so I would urge everybody out there, if you're not getting hate every single day from somebody from standing for what you believe in, you're probably not doing it right. You need to up your game a little bit and get a little hate coming back your way. That's how you know you're having some impact.
One more quickie for John Rich. Matt is in Gallatin with a question for John. Matt, you're on the radio. Go right ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, fellas. John, I appreciate what you said about being bold enough to speak the truth, even when you know you'll be attacked for it. There are so many people here in Sumner County who support Chris but can't say anything publicly, especially our teachers, and are even afraid to donate because of the machines is so strong here. How would you encourage them, or what would you suggest to do to support the candidates in the political establishment that says they can't?
I would say let's tap back into the men and women that founded our country in the first place. Can you imagine if they had that attitude towards the Brits? Can you imagine if they were like, well, I want to do something, but I'm afraid they're so powerful? That's not what being an American is all about. Listen, if you stand back and let them continue to steamroll you and go in there with their pen and paper and put things into motion in this state that are absolutely wrong, like the bills we just laid out that Farrell Hale did, then you're part of the problem. You have no more excuse. You cannot gripe or complain about anything if you don't do something about it. And what's more important to you? Your future and setting an example for your family and your neighbors and everybody around you, or keeping your mouth shut and nobody ever calls you a bad name? Which one's more important? I mean, that's where we're at. This is no more time for games. This one particular bill, SB 126, allowed horrible things to happen in the state of Tennessee for a very long time. And when people do things like that, whether it was out of ignorance on his part or it was on purpose, neither one of them is a good answer. Tanner Stage 1 is not something you just pull out of thin air. So I would look at it very hard, and I would look at yourself really hard and go, why don't I be somebody? Why don't I stand up? Why don't I make a difference once and for all? Because the game is over. There's no more gamesmanship. We're playing for the future right now.
Well, and I want all of you to think for yourselves and recognize that there's an answer to this question. And John Rich can't answer it. Matt Murphy can't answer it. Farrell Hale can answer it. Where is he? I mean, and all I want is for Farrell to step up and answer these questions.
Would you have him on the show?
Absolutely. I'd have him on the show. I'd have him and Chris on the show. We could have a nice little discussion. And Chris Spencer has said that he would be agreeable to come on.
Well, he should do that.
I mean, and Chris has been on alone. And look, Farrell, the door is open. And I would say I'm not asking anybody to make a determination based on what Matt says, and I don't want to speak for John based on what John says. Just do your own homework based on what John has told you today. I know I did. And it created a lot more questions than I have answers for. And I'm very, very confused why someone as intimately involved with pharmaceuticals and the ability to get good medicine to our children would be so involved with a bill like this and get it so wrong. It's odd to me that it would happen the way that it happened, the way that you've described it.
Yeah, and that's why we're having this interview. You know.
All right, so March 28th?
March 28th at the Epic Center in Gallatin, Tennessee, 6 p.m. Chris Spencer will be there. I'll be there. You might be there.
I'll be there.
Matt, you might be there. And you can go to chrisspencerforsenate.com, and there's a banner right there. You click on that to get a ticket. That ticket price will go to support his campaign. Right now, Farrell Hale has $400,000 to $500,000 banked from Pfizer and Eli Lilly and HCA and all the other ones. And Chris is, I mean, hardly anybody knows who he is, and so fundraising's a real big thing for him. So if you want to make a difference, bring all your friends, get some tickets, and show up.
And honey, I know you're listening. Get that singing voice ready. As John says,
Save a horse, ride a cowboy. What?
You know, something you said, I'll leave you with this, and something you said inspired me. What you said about our founding fathers and their reluctance. It reminds me, there's a scene, if you've never seen the miniseries John Adams, starring Paul Giamatti as John Adams, there's a scene in it where he and Abigail Adams are in bed in Braintree, and he tells her that he has to go back to Washington, and she bursts into tears. I think of that scene when I think about the type of politicians that I want, that are sacrificing for their families for the greater good because God compels them to do so. And I feel like in a lot of ways you've done similar things over your career because there have to be moments, as we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, where you're like, man, I need to just be quiet and play my music and make my money, but you're not built that way, and I'm glad you're not built that way.
Well, thanks for giving me a microphone to talk on. Again, I will reiterate, the games are over. We lived through 2020. We saw what the power of the pen can do, how it wrecks our lives, wrecks our families' lives. We've seen what the power of pen can do in SB 126, leaving the door open and putting our kids in harm's way for a couple of years till they had to reverse it. Mm-hmm. This is big stuff, man. This is big. And don't forget, Tennessee has a thing called the 10th Amendment, states' rights. And so when you have a legislation that's pulling in your favor and will vote like you vote and talk like you talk, when Biden or anybody else tries to put something down on us from the federal government, if Tennessee is in alignment, Tennessee can say, yeah, we're not doing that here, and just push right back against it. But you have to have the right people in the right places of power to vote that way, just like you would.
That's a great segue into what we'll be talking about next hour, because when we come back, we'll say goodbye to John. We will be talking about an event happening tomorrow at the state capitol involving the 10th Amendment and our right to push back against this encroachment regarding non-border security and illegal immigration. We'll be doing that next. John, thank you for your time, brother. We
Thank
appreciate
you. See you on the 28th.
There's John Rich. We'll be back in a moment. It's The Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I mentioned, I should say, the Members Nutrition Super Text line. You know, Members Nutrition sponsors the Super Text line. They do so much more than just that. Members Nutrition, if you go to their website, I met with these guys, and they believe in vitamins and supplements and a couple of things. One, they believe in vitamins and supplements that aren't made in China, and that is a rarity. If you go to the brick and mortars, sad to say, you turn over your vitamins or your other supplements, naturally occurring supplements, and most of them are manufactured in China or overseas somewhere. Everything that they do at Members Nutrition is made right here in the good old USA. That's number one, and it's very, very important to me. Number two, we over-medicate ourselves. The pharmaceutical industry has a stranglehold on us. Most of the things that we can utilize to repair what's going on in our bodies can be found naturally on God's green earth. That's where the vitamins and the supplements brought to you by Members Nutrition come from. MembersNutrition.com right now, and in addition to their already lower prices, because they don't have brick and mortar stores, they have a website, they're going to bring you a 50% discount right now. You don't have to put in any code. You don't have to say Matt Murphy sent you. A 50% discount will be offered at checkout. Go to membersnutrition.com. Tell them I sent you. membersnutrition.com.
Hello, 204. Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 56 degrees, a bit warmer today on the first day of spring here in Nashville. Got a weather forecast coming up 2 minutes. Addressing a group of more than 50 defense leaders from Europe and around the world, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin today calling on Israel to do more to protect civilians in Rafah. Secretary Austin at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, speaking after a meeting of the members of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group.
We've been clear about the need to prioritize the protection of civilians and that a military operation should not proceed without a clear and implementable plan to evacuate those civilians out of the battle space and also care for them once you evacuate them.
And right now in Tennessee, Metro Animal Care and Control rescued 17 dogs and 16 cats from a Hermitage home this morning. Officials say the animals were in a hoarding situation. They were in poor health, but they are alive. The house will likely be condemned. That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you for another 51 minutes or so. We'll hand off to the drive with Brian Wilson at that time. Thank you for being around with us. Whatever time you're able to give us, we're appreciative of it. 615-737-9986, 615-737 WWTN. My thanks to John Rich for spending the better part of an hour with us. Good man, good American, great American, and I look forward to seeing him on March 28th. So, So I'm getting a lot of criticism. By the way, I need to make an apology real quick. Well, a couple of apologies. Apologies all around. An apology to Mac Morey for going along with John and creating a dynamic by which his news was late. I apologize, Mac Morey. My sincerest and humblest apologies.
No, it's okay. I started my newscast with hello, hello, which I had never done. And Weber was like, is that what you're doing? I was like, well, when it's 2:04, you lose privilege. You lose the official privileges. So I started with hello, hello.
I kind of like it.
Like, yeah, you know.
It fits
matches
you.
my vibe.
I think you do that a lot. You say hello, hello a lot.
Yeah,
You,
I do,
hello,
I do.
hello.
Hello, hello. How are you? Yeah, of course.
I kind of dig that.
Okay, maybe I found something.
So but I wanted to apologize to you
it's very nice of you.
for being late. I also want to alert you that I've put in my my Super Talk bracket.
Let's go.
You know,
Oh, I'm so excited.
So far, it's me and you.
That's what I was just telling
I have
you.
a 50% chance of winning. So Mac Morey put together a Super Talk 99.7 WTN bracket challenge. He and I briefly talked about this yesterday. I was like, I don't watch these games unless I have a bracket, and I haven't filled out a bracket, and so he put one together.
So I was like, let's do it. What are we
Let's
doing?
go.
Come on.
And you sent it out to all involved, right? I mean, everyone at the station?
Everyone at the station. Yep.
And it's me, and it's you, and that's it.
That's it. And by the way, yeah, Pamela texted back, Han texted back a GIF making fun of me, or a GIF, whatever you call it. And then, yeah, no one else responded. I knew you didn't need to respond because I knew we'd already discussed this. You're going to join. But, yeah, ghosted by everyone else I work with, so it was lovely. You're welcome.
And I'm listening to a conversation involving you and Chris Weber where you're like, come on, man. And my angle, which I thought was a pretty good angle, was don't be like Chris Hand. Because Hand, you sent out the text. So Mac Morey sent out a text. And I feel like all across America, this is happening. All across America.
100%.
The sports fans in every office in America is like, let's do a bracket.
Come on, guys.
Let's go. And the non-sports fans are like, look at you like you just ate a toad.
Exactly.
Well,
why?
It enhances your enjoyment of the game. To which Weber's response was, I'm not watching the game.
Yeah, I'm not doing that anyways.
And so I downshifted to don't be like Chris Hand, who immediately, I guess to his credit, before you even hit send on the group text, he had sent something that said no.
No. Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Support your producer.
Come on, man.
I mean, this guy's wearing trashy Kansas City Chiefs clothing for the better part of 2024, and you can't spend 5 minutes filling out a bracket. I mean, you don't even have to write the names down. The way that you've done it, I mean, you just go boop, boop, boop,
Yep.
boop, 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 boop.
It's
and you're
30
done.
seconds. 30 seconds.
I mean, it's literally, you can put as much or as little energy into it as possible, as you want.
Day 25, by the way, of Chiefs Club.
Oh, jeez. And this one's all cut up. And
Yeah, this is, yeah.
I mean,
This is what my mom's
it
saying.
really is starting to look kind of trashy.
It's really bad.
I mean, there are rips in that shirt.
Oh, yeah. Like my armpits are completely exposed.
Oh, jeez.
That's why I'm wearing this jacket.
You look like you belong in this facility. I'm going to get to why I say that in just a moment. Bell.
Pause.
For no other reason than the fact that I think, underline think, you like Mac Morey and Matt Murphy. Would you spend 2 minutes of your day and click buttons until it says submit?
Does it cost me anything?
No.
Okay.
Okay, does he have to sign up to be a part of ESPN.com?
You might.
That's too much effort. No. Plus, I'm going to start getting spam and stuff.
No. You can say no. No, come back.
Yeah, I don't think you have to sign up. I think you just have to give them an email.
Yeah, just give them an email.
And they're
Give them max. They already have yours, don't they?
I know we're maxing out our ask here by asking you to spend a minute. I mean, you don't. I think this would actually be a pretty good control. Bell would almost end up being kind of a random.
Yes, that's
selector.
exactly right. That's what we need, Bell.
I didn't get the email, by the way, because he knew I wouldn't participate.
I text. You were in the text, and I said if you didn't get the email, let me know.
Oh, I thought that was from Pamela. I didn't realize that was from you.
Oh, Okay.
So he doesn't have you in his phone.
Okay. Yeah.
I
this
do
is
have him
crazy.
in my phone. In fact, it's under his real name.
And Pamela says she's in now.
What? You've got it under Cougar Chow?
No, his real name. The one his mama gave him.
Oh, that's like Maximilian or whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, Malachi.
Malachi or Malachi. Yeah. So the reason that I would suggest, has anyone else in this conversation been into the bathroom on this floor lately?
You talking about the private one?
Dude, we're running out of bathrooms.
We are.
No, it's not just the
We've
private
got
one.
2 available stalls
Yes,
up here, and otherwise we have to go downstairs.
So
We got 40
I don't
dudes
know
up here.
Well, and the one of the stalls that I, without getting terribly personal, I ran
Made use
to
of
the men's room, and I don't think that one's working either. I think we're down 3
Well,
with big handwritten with big handwritten notes.
Yeah.
Not hand as in Chris hand as in by hand. Handwritten notes. Do not use this bathroom. This bathroom is broken. It does not work, and it also stings. I added the last part.
77,000 pieces of tape to ensure.
and somebody highlighted in yellow on the unisex, like the big bold letters weren't enough to notice.
So just to put a visual to what Mac and Bell just said, someone took the time to write out a note with a lot of exclamation points to highlight said note in highlighter with the words no and don't and I mean it. And then they put it up on the door of, for some reason, we have a private bathroom right next to the public bathroom. Like it's a 1-stall bathroom right next to a men's room with multiple stalls.
That's ADA required, so.
Oh, is it that the other one's not ADA compliant? Okay,
Exactly,
sure.
yeah.
All right. So they added that bathroom afterwards because of ADA. Okay, that makes sense. Well, they put it up on this door, and normally you would get some Scotch tape and you would tape the corners of a note. This person took packing tape and taped the entire note as if the door is going to be shipped to Hong Kong, and that's the shipping label.
It's basically if you want to take this note down, you're going to work for it.
Yes. The person that takes this note off of this door will have fixed the bathroom. That's the type of effort we're talking about. Well, now the urinal in the other bathroom is broken.
Out.
And one of the commodes, I think, is broken. So we're down to 1 unit, men. 1 unit.
Oh, got like
1.5, maybe.
I'll fight you for a place to pee.
like 35 guys up here.
There's a lot of dudes.
There's a lot of dudes up
on
here
this floor, and not a lot of women. And there's the women's room. Looking all
beautiful. Looks pristine, I'm sure.
And by the way, has anyone else noticed all the holes in the bathroom walls? Anybody?
Yeah, somebody got angry in there and kicked the wall.
I mean, right now, well, there's a wall, there's a hole in the wall, there's a hole in the doorway. I mean, and the lighting is a little suspect too. Right now, I would suggest to you if Mac Morey took off his coat and went in there with his ripped up, cut up, dingy looking shirt, he'd be like a homeless dude. Just hanging out in the homeless dude bathroom.
Exactly where I should be.
Where you should be. Anyway, that's what we're dealing with up here. I don't know. I just pray that no one important has to go to the bathroom. But enough about me. Anyway, so there's a piece of legislation that's in front of Tennessee lawmakers that I want to tell you about in the final hour of the show. Get your thoughts on it. 615-737-9986. 615-737-9986, either via phone line or via the Members Nutrition Super Text line. I am amazed at the inability for the political left to read the room. Or maybe they just don't care. Maybe they just don't care. When a Justin Jones or a Senator Charlene Oliver or when a Justin Pearson, when they stand up before the General Assembly and they speak to the assembled House of Representatives or Senate respectively, they're not really talking to you. They're not really talking to me. I don't know who they're talking to. Maybe the 20% of Tennesseans that agree with them. They conveniently forget the 80% of the state of Tennessee that send so many Republicans to do the work and to represent them to the General Assembly. More on this protest in just a moment. Tennessee lawmakers in the House of Representatives have passed a bill that would require police officers in our state to let the Department of Homeland Security know that they've encountered an illegal alien. Now, in the article that I'm reading from Fox 17, it says undocumented immigrant. I'm not going to say undocumented immigrant. Illegal alien is a perfectly acceptable term. It's a perfectly acceptable term. What's wrong with illegal alien? Alien designating someone from another part of the world or another country, not the United States of America. Illegal designating their status in this country in terms of whether or not they came here abiding by the law or in violation of the law. Legal versus illegal. Right now, there is a movement going on. I just want to make you aware of it because we're losing the language in so many different ways. Right now, there is a movement going on to stop us from saying illegal alien because it is, quote, dehumanizing. Dehumanizing. How is it dehumanizing to appropriately and properly designate who these people are and what their status is in as much as they are here? I don't look at the word alien as necessarily a pejorative. If I were living in France or if I were living in Australia, I would be an alien to that country. Now, I understand that some would suggest that the word has been co-opted by science fiction in as much as we use the term to designate unidentified flying objects and individuals from other planets or entities from other planets. That's fine. You can use migrant if you want to, or immigrant. I'm perfectly fine with illegal immigrant. Is illegal immigrant okay? Or do we have to say undocumented migrant? I don't even think undocumented migrant is what they say anymore. Isn't it like non-indigenous peoples? Isn't that what they say now? Non-indigenous peoples? For the love. However you say it, they're here and they're swarming and it's an invasion and it needs to stop. And toward that end, the Tennessee lawmakers in the Tennessee House of Representatives passed a bill sponsored by Rusty Grills. Rusty Grills has one of the best names in the Tennessee legislature, if not the best name. I don't know of a better one. Rusty Grills? That's pretty good. Rusty Grills should sell outdoor patio furniture at the Lowe's. I kid. He's actually a great guy. HB 2124, according to the bill's sponsor, Rusty Grills, in light of what happened to Laken Riley in Georgia, in light of what happened in Maryland with a 2-year-old being killed, and many, many other examples of illegal aliens murdering after apprehension, killing our American citizens, in light of the 85 pounds of fentanyl seized on I-40 in West Tennessee, he said it's time to do something about the border crisis right here at home. He says the purpose for the local police officers to share information on any undocumented migrants, their words, not mine, they come in contact with, they must share said information with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. House Democrats pushed back on this issue. I'll tell you what they had to say in just a moment and tell you about a rally that's happening to impress upon the state of Tennessee our desire as a people of the state of Tennessee to see more done, as much as we possibly can do, with regard to our 10th Amendment rights to protect us against the scourge of drug trafficking, the scourge of human trafficking, and the scourge of the open southern border and the lack of security that brings with it. We'll tell you about that coming up tomorrow afternoon in just a moment on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief is located in Franklin. For the last 3 decades, Dr. Gill and his team have been helping people like you eliminate pain out of your life, getting you back to a healthier lifestyle, getting you back to the activities that you've once enjoyed thanks to a lack of pain in your back, in your hip, in your neck, in your knee, wherever it might hurt. Elbow, they can handle it. And obviously lower and upper back, they've got you covered. The Dr. Gill Center believes in helping people get back to a pain-free life and lifestyle. And for the last 30 years plus, they've been doing just that. Now with Dr. Wendy, Dr. Dominic, Dr. V, they take a team approach. Chiropractic care has never been more important, especially with the lifestyles that we're living. And folks, you need to get that care to avoid having to take pills. If you pop pills on a regular basis because of your back pain, why not spend the $49 that it costs for initial consultation? It will be a complete examination. One of their fine chiropractic care physicians will go over you. They'll take some x-rays as to where it hurts. They'll find out what is the causal factor of your pain, and then they will get a plan of action together to help you live a pain-free lifestyle. That's what it's all about. Without having to pop pills, without having to expect needles on a regular basis, and without considering surgery. It's what it's all about. The Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. Call them today for that appointment, 615-882-4838. 882-4838. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to the Dr. Gill Center.
A new twist on a murder case, an over-the-counter birth control pill, and a controversial Texas immigration law going into effect. We'll have the latest at 2:30 Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
All right, I'm calling an audible. I'm not going to talk about the Texas immigration bill that the Supreme Court is allowing because McMurray's going to talk about that. I will extrapolate and give my feelings on it coming up just after the bottom of the hour news. Also coming up a little bit later on, an update as to where Chris Webber is going with regard to the bracket challenge presented by McMurray, a.k.a. Cougar Chow, and Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Also, Bell K update before we leave these airwaves at 3 o'clock. All right, that's on the way. House Democrats are pushing back against the legislation that I would think most Tennesseans would be in favor of. Now, let me give you the lay of the land here. All this bill would do is require in light of everything that we've seen going on in America, in light of the idea that we have during the Biden administration 7.5 to 8.5 illegal aliens flooding the zone into the United States of America, including right here in the state of Tennessee. Many of these people, I'm certain, just want to work. Some of them will be a net negative on the system. As a matter of fact, statistically, illegal migrants unfortunately become a net negative to any system that they enter based on the use of resources, natural use of resources. And you know what? If that's what we want collectively as a nation, that's all well and good. I don't believe that's what we want. If it is what we want, we would change our immigration law and we would turn illegal aliens into legal aliens or legal migrants. So House Republican Rusty Grills recognizing the situation with Lake and Riley over in Georgia, recognizing the number of high-profile incidences where local authorities allowed illegal aliens to go. They apprehended them for doing something illegal. They knew that they were illegal, and they allowed them to walk. That's what happened in New York. The guy could have been apprehended in New York. He was not. He could have been turned over in New York. He was not. Sadly, they let him go, and he made his way to Athens, Georgia, and he killed a woman. And sad as it is to say, people die every day because of our southern border. People die every day because of the porous nature of the southern border. People die every day, either through fentanyl overdose or accidental death, through drunk driving or traffic accidents or mishaps, through murder and mayhem. Every day, people die at the hands of illegal aliens. And sure, every day people die at the hands of legal citizens as well. The point is, if they were not here, but for the Biden southern border lack of a policy, they wouldn't be here. Well, this bill would do a little something about it. A little something. Inasmuch as it would require local police officers to share information on undocumented migrants that they come in contact with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. House Democrats don't like it one bit. Justin Pearson said it's detrimental, harmful, racist, and xenophobic. Justin Jones, good old brother Jones. The politics of division and xenophobic hatred is not about protecting American citizens. It's about creating racist fears of migrants that be the red meat of racism. How about Justin Jones? You sit down with the Riley family and you tell them that they're being xenophobic and that getting a handle on our southern border has nothing to do with protecting American citizens. You scumbag.
He probably has them blocked on Twitter already.
I would imagine that he does. I'll tell you, Cougar Chow's going to block me if I don't get to this. It's 2:32. Super Talk 99.7 WT, and it's time for news.
.232, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 56 degrees, partly sunny, some winds in Music City. Got a forecast on the way. Got a new twist to report in the case of a Utah woman accused of killing her husband and then writing a children's book on grief and loss. Alex Stone reports.
Corey Richens is in jail in Utah awaiting trial, accused of murdering her husband by overdosing him with fentanyl, and newly released court documents indicate her mother's romantic partner also died from a drug overdose in 2006, and her mother was named as a beneficiary on her partner's estate before the partner's death. Her mother has not been arrested or charged, but was the subject of a search. A detective writing in documents it was possible that Richens' mother was involved in the husband's death.
An over-the-counter birth control pill now available to women nationwide. Online sales have begun and will be in drugstores soon. Opill is officially available online without a prescription. And the Supreme Court permitting the controversial Texas immigration law SB 4 to go into effect. Stephen Portnoy.
It's not a ruling on the merits, just a decision not to intervene now. Liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor says the action, quote, invites further chaos and crisis, allowing Texas to upend the federal-state balance of power. SB 4 empowers local police to arrest migrants and permits state judges to order them to, quote, return to the foreign nation from which the person entered.
And that is the latest news. Weather forecast coming up next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
When it comes to podcasts, I recommend a few of them, and one of them that I recommend, the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast. I came to know Steve Abramowitz soon after I came to Nashville. It was around the same time that he came to Nashville, Tennessee, Franklin to be more specific, and he started the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast because he understands what happens when you're California, or in his case, California, you're Washington State. And he doesn't want you to Washington State, you're Tennessee. And he knows what that means because he's lived through it. He talks about this quite a bit on his podcast, amongst other things. It's really an all-service podcast. I mean, obviously, they talk a good bit about politics. Frequently, you'll find him the number one podcast on Podomatic under the politics category. But they talk to artists and cultural touchstones. They're talking to me today. I'm going to be a part of the Murphy's Law segment of the Mill Creek View podcast later on today. I don't know exactly when that publishes, but I'll find out for you and let you know. One way or the other, you can find me and so many others on the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. Steve is also CEO and editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper, mcview.us. And you'll see Steve, if you go downtown to the rally tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock in front of the state capitol to support doing everything in our power as a state to stop the flood of illegal immigration, you'll see Steve Abramowitz right there. He's speaking at the event, as a matter of fact. Steve Abramowitz in the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast. Go to mcview.us. That's mcview.us. I encourage you to do one of the well, you know what? I don't know which you should do first. I'm at a loss. Either go to glockstore.com, or shoot270.com and see the incredible selection of Glocks that they have, custom-made Glocks, accessories. Oh, my goodness gracious. They've got something for every price point. If you're thinking of giving a gift, maybe you're looking for some of those concealed carry underpants that I talk about all the time. Maybe you're over on the Shoot 270 side of things, and you're looking for a date where you can go in and get trained up by a qualified trainer. They've got many, many trainers over there at the Glock store. You can do that as well. I'm torn between telling you to do that or just telling you to go in. Isn't it nice? You know, there are people all over the country that shop at glockstore.com. People all over the country shop at shoot270.com to find out exactly where they should be shooting and what type of shooting environment is out there. Maybe they're just in shooting lanes and they want to get to something more. But you and I have the ability to go right by and see for ourselves. I mean, the showroom is absolutely gorgeous. The people are friendly. No matter your level of expertise, they're going to treat you with respect and treat you like they would treat family, because that's what you are. You truly are family at the world-famous Clock Store. Go by and see them today on Elm Hill Pike, just off of Elm Hill Pike on Airlane Drive. Or better yet, just go by on the website, glockstore.com or shoot270.com. I encourage you to sign up for a training session or a shooting room environment. And if you've never done it, you got to do it. It's like something you've never seen. It's the world-famous Clock Store. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I can't believe I didn't think of this. We were talking about this bill sponsored by Rusty Grills. 2714 on the Members Nutrition Super Text line. Rusty Grills should sell propane and propane accessories. That's actually pretty good. Hello, Rusty. Come on in here. Let me show you what's going on. I don't do a good Hank Hill. My Hank Hill, after a minute or two, goes immediately to Kermit the Frog. That's not where you want to go. But Hank Hill's somewhere on the way to Kermit the Frog, which I do a better Kermit the Frog. But I agree with you. Rusty Grills could and should sell propane and or propane accessories. It sounds good to me. This gathering tomorrow, the 20th, on the steps of the Tennessee Capitol, it is an effort to take back what is rightly ours as a state. Now, I don't think that we need to make the perfect the enemy of the good. I don't think that it is necessary. And one of the reasons that I get a little bit frustrated with some in the state, because they, through their frustration with what hasn't happened with regard to illegal alien activity in the state of Tennessee, they suggest or they out and out state or demand that you accept that there's intentionality. What I mean by that is that the current politicians that have been empowered and entrusted with the people's vote to do the will of the people of the state of Tennessee, for the most part, they're doing as best they can. Or maybe they see it slightly differently than we do. So I'm not there to promote this event to suggest that any politician does not have the best for the state of Tennessee in their hearts and in their minds. I hope that each of them do. But I do appreciate people like Brandon Lewis and Steve Abramowitz. Pamela Furr, I think, is speaking at this event, a number of elected officials. It's happening tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I very much appreciate drawing awareness to the issue and drawing an awareness that we need to be doing everything in our power as a state to address what is ultimately a federal issue, but there are many ways that the state can address the federal issue or the lack of movement on the federal issue of illegal immigration. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, all of us are invited. I cannot be there, obviously, because I will be I'm detained. I have a previous engagement here on the radio show. And no, there was really no way for me to do it. Someone asked me if I could do a show outside of the Capitol, and I cannot. Or at least I will not.
Just let Bell and I take over.
Oh, you want to do it?
Yeah, 3 hours, Bell and I.
Bell? Bell's busy texting. Bell's not paying attention to being a producer of the show, but you want him to pay attention to be a host?
Co-host.
Oh, co-host. Bell, you ready?
No, I don't want to do that.
Okay, sweet. Just me.
I don't get paid enough for that kind of responsibility.
Wait a minute. That's my line. So, no, that would be a big no, Mac. Congratulations.
All right.
Way to go. Yeah.
Tried.
You get a yes out of the other Chris yet? Weber?
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I'm trying to stay silent here. You know, the more we push him, the more he wants to go away.
He's just going to say no just to say no?
Exactly.
That's no good. Well, one way or the other, 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon in front of the state capitol, a rally supporting Tennessee doing everything in our power to stop illegal immigration as it exists in our state, creating a drug crisis, creating a human smuggling crisis, and otherwise making our lives worse than they could be with regard to just trying to live our daily lives. In the meantime, states are I saw this story. I saw this story this morning. I heard Brian Wilson talking about this late in the show yesterday afternoon. Give credit where credit is due. My wife absolutely hates a Bradford pear tree. We had one in my yard growing up, my grandmother's yard growing up. She liked the pretty blooms and the pretty flowers, did not like the way that it smelled. They smell like rotting flesh or rotting fish when they are in bloom. Bradford pear trees are a common sight throughout the state of Tennessee, and although for some they are aesthetically pleasing, they bring along with them this time of year unpleasant smell and they threaten surrounding ecosystem. I did not know this until fairly recently that the Bradford pear tree was an invasive species and is included on the Tennessee Invasive Plant Council's Invasive Plants of Tennessee list. Some states have taken measures, according to the article that I'm reading from in the Tennessean. Some states have taken measures to fight back against the smelly, harmful tree. South Carolina is set to ban the purchase and sale of the trees starting on October 1st. According to the Nashville Tree Conservation Corps, who knew there was such a thing, a Tennessee nonprofit organization which works to protect and preserve the tree canopy in Davidson County, Bradford pear trees are appearing more frequently throughout Middle Tennessee, which begs the question, should the state of Tennessee be the next to outlaw the Bradford pear? South Carolina has banned the Bradford pear due to its status as an invasive species. They choke out other plants. They pollinate a similar thornier version of the tree in wild areas, interrupting the feeding habits of the surrounding insects and birds. The trees are also included in the state's plant pest list. For these reasons, it is illegal to plant, sell, or grow Bradford pear trees in Ohio. The trees were banned in 2023. In Pennsylvania, in November of 2021, they added the Bradford pear to its noxious weed list. Legislation to ban Bradford pears have also been proposed in Missouri, and Kansas. The Missouri proposal would prohibit nurseries from selling or distributing the Bradford pear along with other invasive species. The Kansas proposal would prevent anyone from bringing a Bradford pear into the state or moving one within the state beginning in 2027. According to the Nashville Tree Conservation Corps, the trees crowd out native plants. They cannot host native insects, which presents a problem for bird populations that depend on insects like caterpillars for their diet. Also detrimental to the area-wide population, or pollination, I should say, needs of other plants. They have a short lifespan, which causes a shorter generational turnover, allowing for a rapid spread of the tree. It's not necessarily harmful, or it's not just the harm to the natural environment. They also pose a threat to surrounding residential or commercial properties. Why the hell do we have the tree to begin with? The tree smells during this time of year because it exudes this smell to attract pollinators. And the unpleasant smell lingers until the white flowers fall off. They do produce fruit, which is inedible to human beings. So the state of Tennessee is actually considering banning the Bradford pear tree, which begs the question, what exactly is on the invasive plants of Tennessee list? And I happen to have some of the list right now. Along with the Bradford pear, there's a lot of things that we don't like. I mean, the Bradford pear is the tree version, apparently, of kudzu, which was originally brought to Georgia to combat erosion. There's a great documentary called King Kudzu, discussing a guy that was an editor of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution back in the day and he was a big-time proponent to bring kudzu to the South to stop erosion. And he's probably one of the primary reasons that you see it as often as you do. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. The Bradford pear, the scourge of Tennessee. It's 2:50 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you for a few more moments. The United States Supreme Court today has announced that it will allow Texas to continue to enforce a law that or to enforce a law that allows local police to arrest migrants suspected of crossing the border illegally. I don't want to speak for the man, but I am certain that this is on a lengthy docket of topic selections for Brian Wilson in the drive this afternoon. And I want to thank Brian Wilson for helping me recognize, as I was listening to him yesterday afternoon, that I've come to the conclusion, Brian, that the Bradford pear might be the worst Chinese import not named COVID-19.
Listen, I'm telling you, I didn't know squat about Bradford pears until about a year ago. We have this house out here in Watertown, and I have 10 of them. and I thought, well, now what do I do? I mean, I know why they actually became popular. It was about 20 years ago or so that people realized, that if you're building new properties, that you need to get a tree in there that will grow fast, then plant a Bradford pear and you'll get a big tree pretty quick. They're just not very good trees. They're trash trees is what they are, and I've got 10 of them. I'm going to have to cut one down, but if I cut down 10 of them, can you imagine the cost of having to cut down 10 of these trees, and then you have a barren piece of property that's going to take a while as you replant new trees alongside where they were? It's a heck of a deal, and I'm feeling really bad about the fact that I have Bradford pear trees because nobody wants a tree that's on the noxious weed list.
Well, I'll say this. If we're cutting down Bradford pears, if that's our whitewashing of the fence and you're Tom Sawyer, I'm in on it. I'll help you cut it down.
Well, I got a chainsaw, but I mean, these are big trees. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to clear. And I've got a chainsaw. I'm a little dangerous with it, though. I just want to warn you.
What else besides soliciting people to come to your property and cut Bradford pears up? What else you got going on in the drive?
You mentioned it. A big Supreme Court decision came down just in the last little bit, and this is huge, huge, huge news for the state of Texas and a big blow to the Biden administration. It ain't over yet, but it's a good start, and we'll start with that at the top of the 3 o'clock hour right after the news.
You never know what you're going to get on the drive, and Brian Wilson will have it all for you starting at 3 and on until 7 o'clock when he hands off to Mark Levin. Mac Morey starts it all off with the newscast, and that happens right now. We'll be back tomorrow, folks, for a midweek edition. Until then, have a wonderful afternoon. Hug your loved ones. The drive is next. So long.